A few weeks ago, one of my really successful clients had an epiphany. And she was excited about that. And she said, and I'm so frustrated that this wasn't obvious to me before because this would have made things so much easier. Well, in this video, I want to make sure that her insight is one that's obvious to you too. And even if it is, that you're clear about why you really need to work in this way as you continue to expand your responsibility and as you continue to dream bigger. Hi, this is David with another video for you, those people who can see around corners to see a better future and also have the courage and the stamina to stick with it even through the very difficult times to bring that to life. Welcome to the Leadership Library. This particular client the insight that she was having was really around that it was time for her to adopt a new success strategy. Things had worked one way well for her before, but now as she had greatly expanded her responsibility, things needed to shift. And at one level, it's really obvious. She was needing to negotiate how to have her association with the what and the why of leadership and the how of leadership. The what and the why are the what is the outcome? What is the destination that we're driving for? And to be really clear about that. And then the why, what's the inspiration? What are the stories and the pictures that need to be clear to people, you and others, so that when things get difficult, they'll still have the fuel to keep going. The how, of course, is the strategy as well as the execution. So in most people's experience, when they're earlier in their career, it's going to look somewhat like this. Of course, I hope you'll always be clear about and lead with some of the what and the why, always. But then here at an earlier stage, maybe when you have a job that you remember earlier in your career, you needed to be much longer in the how. So you were the one who was making sure that the work actually got done. So yes, you led with the what and the why. It wasn't super long, but you were super long in the how. And that's how you got ahead, and you got rewarded for that. And when you did, you advanced. Now, in the next position, it was probably true that you needed to be a little bit more concerned. So you were a bit longer in the what and why than you were before, and still long in, but not quite as long in I drew that too long. Not quite as long in the how. So, and that's really how it progresses. Each advancement you gain, you're more concerned with leading with a little bit more what and why, and probably doing a little bit less of the execution. And that continues, and that's a difficult transition, but there's usually a point in anyone's career, regardless of whether you work in a huge organization or a small one, where there is a big skip that happens, and that usually happens, often it's when you become like a general manager or responsible for P&L. Another way to look at it is when there are more people around you who have an expertise that is not your expertise. Meaning, if you grew up in marketing, for many years you worked around a lot of other marketers. But at some point, when there are more people in the organization who are not in marketing that work for you, then actually share your expertise, that's when you've made this transition. And I drew this sort of invisible line because it's not like anybody's going to say, hey, you crossed the line. But that's when it happens. If you grew up in tech, it's that moment when there are you are in the minority of people who have the tech expertise now. And when that happens, your success strategy really does need to drastically change, which is where now you're much more concerned about, you still lead with the what and the why, but you're much longer in that. And your concern for the how is still there, but it's going to be much shorter. Your concern for the how here is more going to be at the strategic level, understanding that the execution level of the how will be handled by other people in your organization. So you lead still with the what and the why, and it's longer. And then each time you advance, again, it's going to happen again where you take on more of the what and the why, and never zero of the how, but you'll be much more concerned at a strategic level. And it was at this point that my client found herself where she had actually made this transition, but nobody says, hey, it's time to do make the big switch. And it had come to her a little bit later than she had hoped. So look at your own position right now. Where are you? Are you here? Are you here? Have you crossed the invisible line without realizing it? And even if you're really aware of it, I want to make sure that you understand why it's important that you stay here. Because if you got rewarded for this often, this is a really easy place to want to go back to because it's comfortable. It felt good. It feels good for many people to be experts in the how. And when things get stressful, all of us return to what is familiar and what is most comfortable. And so even if you've crossed this line, it's really tempting to want to come back here. So let's understand, what are the risks if you don't pay attention and you accidentally come back and start to worry more about the how than it is your role right now. First is that you're going to reduce the impact. If you're not able to stay focused on your part of the role, the impact immediately will change. People aren't going to be clear, on the second piece, which is they're not going to be clear on the destination. If the destination is clear, I think it's Brene Brown who says, clear is kind. She means that in giving feedback, but I think it also applies to a clear destination is kind. Otherwise, it's confusing. And even when you're planning a trip with your GPS, you need to know two things. You need to know where you are, the from, and the to, where you're going. And so it will be your role here to help people make sure that they're clear about that. Without that, they'll be spinning their wheels more than they need to. I'm not saying it will never be difficult, but it'll be difficult for no reason. Third, if you're not clear on the why, then when things do get difficult, people don't have the fuel to keep going. Look, when everything is easy, understanding why may not be such a big deal. But why is what gives people fuel so that when it is difficult, they can find the inspiration to move through, to keep coming back, to keep trying again, even though there seems to be no solution. So if you haven't given them that, if you haven't helped them recognize that, it's going to reduce their fuel. The fourth risk that you take if you're not clear which of these you need to do, and if you're not providing enough of the what and the why when it's your role to do that, is that you're going to spend more time working in the business, or you're going to want to, than working on the business. And that's essentially, when you're working in the business and your expertise is a how, essentially you have a hammer and you're looking for the proverbial nail. You have a solution that's worked over and over and you're just working for people to sort of force that on them, than really living in the working on the business, which is understanding the marketplace, understanding your customer, and defining clearly what do they need and how can you help them. And it may be a different how than the one you used to be great at. So working on the business versus working in the business is where you need to be spending your time, and that's more of the what and the why. It's not never the how, because you need to be able to be strategic, but your concern over here is more strategic than tactical. And then lastly, the risk that you take is that you're going to swoop in. And swooping in to do the job that these people can actually do is the best possible way to kill capacity in your organization. Because there will be times when you might need to step in because you do have the deepest expertise or you do have the greatest authority. But your real concern around the how when you're here is it's strategy, and then it's how do I clear obstacles for you? What resources do you need? How do I open doors to make sure that you can do the job that you need to do? But if you swoop in and you try and do that for them, it doesn't take too many times. You've seen it before. You may have even experienced this when somebody did it to you. They'll be like, okay, I know you're going to make up your mind anyway. You're going to tell me how I have to do it. So I'll just wait here until you make up your mind and tell me what you want. And then I'll go do that. And that's a great way to kill capacity. So I know that the difference between how and what and why is obvious. And you've probably had to make that transition to some degree yourself. I want to make sure that you're clear that there will be a point, maybe you've already crossed it, when you need to be much more concerned about the what and the why, and leave the how to others once you've set the strategy. And so I ask, where are you? And are you acting according to where you can add the most value? Also, I would just say that this is, even though it's obvious, I found that people find this framing really useful. So if you know somebody who's in the process or has recently crossed this line and maybe could use the words and a picture to help them stay clear about it, please share this video with them. And I'd love to hear from you. Where are you? And what are you going to do with this? Or what are you doing with this understanding? And I'll see you in the next video.